Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Beyond the Taj, the podcast in which we discuss the richness, complexity, and diversity of the Indian Muslim experience, from the distant past to the here and now. I'm your host, Safa Ahmed, and in today's episode, we're talking about the experience of living as a Muslim in India, in an India where democracy has been all but smothered by Hindu supremacist ideology. So often, the stories of Indian Muslims are told for them. On a daily basis, they are used as fodder for propaganda by the Hindu far right. Their history is distorted and used to fuel Hindu supremacist mythologies about who really gets to be Indian. They are treated as news headlines and statistics, sometimes even by those who are well meaning. But to understand what it's like to live as a Muslim in India today, we have to move beyond abstraction and listen to those living in this reality, grappling with fear, resilience, identity, and resistance in their everyday lives. So, in this episode, we're asking the question, what is it like to live as a Muslim in Narendra Modi's India? To speak in depth on this subject, we're honored to have this conversation with Sharjeel Usmani, an independent researcher and activist based in India. Sharjeel played a prominent role in mobilizing and leading the movement against the Citizenship Amendment Act, and was subsequently jailed for his involvement. Out on bail now, he has been actively engaged in community mobilization and activism in India, and we're so honored to have him here with us today. Sharjeel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So often, Muslims have to prove their Indianness, which is such a paradox when you consider that so much of Indian iconography in the modern age and Indian soft power is rooted in Muslim contributions, be it the Taj Mahal or Shah Rukh Khan. So, to start us off on this note of defiance, what do you believe Indian Muslims ought to take the greatest pride in?
There's a lot of things that Muslims of India can take pride in and should. The one of the first attacks that happened to the Muslims post independence was we were stripped of our history, and a major portion of our history was attributed to Pakistan or some other country, or it was simply disappeared from the public memory. Like for example, it was the Indian Muslims, or more broadly, the Muslims of the subcontinent, who proved in the past century who were the leaders of the Ummah, who played a very prominent role, not just in the subcontinent, not just against British imperialism, but for the movement of Palestine. The Muslim Congress for Palestine happened in Egypt. Two elected members of Bengal government, uh, Chaudhry Khaliquzzama and another one, I'm forgetting his name. They went to attend the Muslim Congress. They fought. They brought all the leaders from the Muslim world and tried to build a consensus that we should not let Palestine go. And when it was failing, they went to the they went to England and tried to lobby there so that the Palestinian mandate is not passed there. And they stayed there for 6 months, and there also they failed. So I mean, you have exhausted all your ways, but they did not stop there. These two men from England, they went to Geneva. There was League of Nations at that time. It was a predecessor of United Nations. They met the Secretary General and the President, asking them to do something about Palestine, and then they failed there. And I'm not sure how people would take this. That was like the final last resort. Now you have to make your way home, but they did not stop there. And in fact, one of the last two battalions that in the first war between Israel and Palestine, one of the last two battalions that left uh, towards the very end, who fought until the very end, were the Delhi wing and the Travancore wing, named after the cities of Delhi and Trivandrum in Kerala. If you look at the property that are waqf in Palestine, from all the way from Gaza to Jerusalem, you'll find almost every third or fourth property is made waqf by the Muslims of India, and it goes as back as 11th century, and that's has been our legacy in the Arab world. Uh, what was happening when the caliphate was Ottoman caliphate was being dismantled? The only place in the entire world where a movement to stop that started was India, and it eventually died. It was a very popular movement. It went on for 2 years, created a lot of problems for the British government, but it eventually died. But they did not stop there. They went and met the US president. A delegation of Indian Muslims went and met the US president, asking him to intervene, and the Muslims of the subcontinent and the entire Arab world would support you. Eh, So they were trying to exhaust every way. They actually tried politics, diplomacy, and resistance, actual armed resistance also, and that eventually failed. The armed deal between Indian Muslims and the fascist party failed. The fact that they were going to that extent shows their commitment, and it was because that when one of the very prominent leaders of he was from Rampur, UP, the two brothers Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali. When Shaukat Ali died in the Round Table Conference in UK in 1932, I think. His other brother went to receive his body and bring back for cremation to India. And while he was there, the Imam of Al-Aqsa Mosque wrote him a telegram asking him to bring the body to Palestinian state so that we can bury him in the Al-Aqsa compound, and they obliged, and over 50,000 Palestinians attended. Uh, the body was lifted by the ambassadors of all the all the great Muslim empires of the time, including Egypt, the ambassadors of Egypt, Iraq, Iran, and Saudi. They were the ones who were lifting body of this Indian man who we have seemed to forgotten as a global community, and that's something that we should take pride in. It's something that we have been stripped of this history, and many a times the Muslims at large globally, d- don't consider they don't even acknowledge the presence of Indian Muslims, let alone their contributions to the Ummah, and that's something that we have to remind them over and over.
I think it's so telling that at one point the Indian Muslim community was synonymous with revolution, synonymous with leadership globally. And now, when you ask the global community, Indian Muslims are synonymous with victimhood, unfortunately. And we'll do a little bit more unpacking of that because, in some ways, that is still a stereotype. But I want to ask you now, you're quite young. Do you remember in India when Muslims didn't have to be so painfully aware that they were the other?
Unfortunately not. I mean, my parents and people of his generation have that kind of memory, but we don't. Our generation doesn't. Anybody who was born post 92, which was the year when Babri Masjid was demolished, India changed significantly after that, and that's how the rise of BJP started. That was the initial phase when BJP was rising, and this whole Hindutva movement was taking its actual physical form. It was there as a subtext. There was a presence of Hindutva element within Congress also. It was always there in the government, but now they were taking their own independent political shape. And ever since that, it has always been about the question of Muslims in India has always been about national security. Uh, the way a state looks at its subject is the lenses of a citizen. The state considers each and every citizen a citizen, and being a citizen has certain rights, privileges, and duties, and so on and so forth. But primarily after 92, after the demolition of Babri Masjid, the Muslims were increasingly being seen as national security subjects. And then the industry of Islamophobia, global war intelligence, they all added on to that, and we had our own indigenous uh, n- n- nurturing of Hindutva and war and terror and so on and so forth. And till date, the several thousand of Muslims are still in prison on fabricated terror charges and whatnot. And this also informs your relation with your neighbors, with your friends. Since we are a minority here, like every mm, out of every 10 people, only two are Muslims. So if you in a city of uh, 100,000 Muslims, only 20,000 are Muslim. 100,000 Hindu population, only 20,000 are Muslims. So you have to interact with them on a daily basis. So that interaction was uh, like choreographed a lot. It wasn't very natural. I mean, you have to calculate how to deal and so on. So that's how it has. So to say, I'm trying to suffice that we don't have a memory where our identity wasn't a site of violence or contestation uh, or stigma even in several senses. So not in our memory, but there are people in my parents' generation who remember better times. At least socially, there was a much more social cohesion. They like my parents' generation, but they were the sons and daughters of people who had led the freedom movement. That was the second or third generation. So the people who had led the movement, they were still alive. They were old, but they were still there. The politicians, several politicians of those times were there. So there was some moral fabric still intact, but now it's, and I'm more afraid of the coming generation. See, whatever is happening in India today, it's designed to be that way. They have incentivized it, but the ones who are doing that, the ones who have been peddling this hate, who've been nurturing this hate, think about their sons and their daughters. What kind of upbringing they are getting, and what will happen when they grow up and they have to deal with uh, their fellow citizens, other minorities, and what will be their perception. That would be the coming years would be more challenging than what we face now. So
It's a very deep radicalization that's taking place right now. But I also want to, you touched a little bit on the human element of that experience. And I want to go a little bit deeper. What is it like, either for you growing up or for children today? What is it like the emotional impact of growing up seeing Hindu supremacist ideology everywhere you look, on social media, in classrooms, from your friends, from your neighbors? What does that do to a person?
the first thing that it attacks is it strips you of your humanity, your dreams and your ambitions. Like I know a lot of people who simply don't care about anything about their lives, their progress. They say somebody is really wanted to be a businessman, so they won't now, or they are less motivated to do so because what's the point? They'll come and close the shop, they'll demolish my shop or whatever. Uh, that's what's the point of doing PhD? I won't get a job here, or what is even point of applying? I won't get admission there. That's how the choices are made now. And more specifically, see, it started in 2014, uh, and the first thing they did was they flooded the entire public space with this hate. So you open your phone on Facebook, on Twitter, everywhere else, on TV, yeah, on the streets. So imagine there's a child who's 10 years old in 2014. That's the that's about the age when you start. You have learned enough from your family, and you start learning from the society. You start observing things in the society. You are trying to let go of the protection of your parents, and you are trying to navigate, find things on your own. And you start seeing this everywhere in your school, in the market, on TV, on your phone. And that child is now 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. What kind of mind he has? So we don't understand the psychological cost of all of that. But yeah, it's pretty depressing, and but I mean, and it's not quantifiable also. I mean, what all is happening, but that is the first and most difficult battle. Once you overcome this, the other things become easier. And this, I mean, that's what people like Malcolm X over there in your country and were trying to do. I mean, uh, for the oppressed, just to like like if you see the general messaging is always the kind of pacifist message that you don't have to angry, be strong. I mean, when all of this is happening, it is the only natural human thing to do is to be angry, to be emotional, to cry. If you're seeing your home demolished and somebody's telling you that you have to be strong, that is also inhuman to force somebody, to expect somebody who has been going through all of that to not be human. I mean, that's the only physical thing that we have left. It's our body, our humanity, and you want to strip us of that also because it might appear better. I mean, so so yeah, that's something that I personally learned a lot from Malcolm, to think that way, and Alhamdulillah, a lot of people here also have now started. They've seen when it first hits you, you try to navigate that, or or try to go other way and escape. And but when you, it's been over 10 years, no, 50, almost 15 years, and so it becomes part of your daily life, part of your immediate reality. Now you start figuring out how to live with this, and then you start figuring out how to make this lesser, the violence lesser, and that's how the people get creative, and they find strangers. Like if you are active on social media, you'll see, especially in the social media of Indian Muslims, they have one of the ways that they cope or they express themselves is really this really dark jokes on their own violence and violence upon them, and they sort of are trying to fight back in a way that that might not seem very material, but they are trying to take back the agency. They're laughing, and they know what is happening on to them is wrong, but they're also making fun of it. Like that's the limit that you can go. Like, for example, if somebody asks me, why are you doing this now? I mean, they've been jailed. Uh, like whatever your futures for you had planned for yourself, your education, this is subject, and so on and so forth. Uh, my motivation is like, what else can they do? The biggest laws that they have, UAPA, NSA, sedition. There's something called the Gangster Act. And there's something called Zila Badar in Urdu. I don't know what it's called in English. Where you are forced to leave your city. You can't enter your city for X number of years. So they've done all of that to me. I have 13 cases in 6 states. Uh, the only thing that they can do more is prolong my life in prison. The thing that they have been doing with Omar Khalid and Sharjeel Imam and the rest who have recently got in, last week only got in bail. That's the last thing. That's the only thing they can do. So, from my point of view, now they are powerless, right? I mean, this is a very weird way of thinking, but that's how most of the youth are navigating now. So, yeah, somebody has to uh, take stock of the actual mental toll, and it's a important project. I mean, more capable researchers should do. I can only take an estimate, and it's bad.
I think that still, once again, though, highlights the spirit of fighting back. It doesn't go away in a person despite how much darkness is pressing in on all sides. But I think there's another element to this tragedy, and this manufactured climate of hate. You've been clear in several interviews that the Muslim struggle and the Muslim identity itself is invisibilized in India, and that's on both sides of the political spectrum. So I want to ask you, what does that mean in a practical sense? What does it mean for the Muslim identity to be erased?
What is happening here, this is not specific to BJP. We need to understand that there's been a very concentrated effort by the Indian state to secularize Muslims. This process to make them go through this process of secularization, that they are good enough to be uh, taken as an equal citizen, something like that, and to be uh, promoted to an actual citizen than just a population who has to be accommodated somewhere in India within the boundaries of India. That's how the state has solved the Muslim problem, dealt with the Muslim question. That now we are stuck with this 200 million Muslims. We have to accommodate them within our boundaries. Let's show them in some corners of every city, and that's how it was. But if you go through a certain process of secularization and you start speaking a certain language, strip yourself from your religious identity, maybe you'll will be promoted quickly than the others. And that was a state project. It's very evident since 1947 onwards. You'll see that was happening. But now what is happening is this is happening at a more personal level, in the sense that uh, any aspect of Muslim life that is visible to the others uh, has to be disappeared. If you see a minar of a mosque, that has to be demolished. If you see a madrasa, that has to be demolished. If you see a shrine, that has to be demolished. If you see Muslims with a skull cap, they have to be intimidated, threatened, or even attacked. Sometimes lynched also. Case of Junaid is particularly depressing one. Uh, the 14-year-old boy who was traveling on train just before Eid to buy clothes for himself and his brother, and he gave his seat to an elderly man, and offered his seat, and that man sat on his seat, and that man was part of the mob who like lynched him to death in a moving train, a train that would have at least had at least 10,000 passengers. And they threw him on the platform, on the next platform. His brother was holding his Junaid in his arms, all the blood pouring from all sides. And he was asking for help, and nobody on the platform also seemed to care. Uh, uh, then you have problem with Muslim women wearing hijab and niqab. You're trying to find creative ways to ban them. You're trying to strip Muslims of their personal laws. You're trying to uh, uh, you're trying to strip them of their personal laws, in the sense that they are trying to uh, interfere in how Muslims marry, how they divorce, how they donate their lands. Like the recent issue is about Waqf land. Muslims willingly give away their part of a part of their property to the community in the name of Allah, for the welfare of the community. And now you want to stop that also. That's not how you're going to do that. We'll tell you how it should be done, so on and so forth. So any aspect, and not just here, you slowly see in the popular culture also, in the media also, they also want to entertain certain kind of Muslim figures who gets to represent Muslims in the popular spaces. If you see somebody like Javed Akhtar would be called upon, used to be called upon on Muslim issues to discuss. He is known to be he publicly calls himself an atheist. He he basically dismantles, challenges every basic tenet of Islam. He is not a member of faith, but any issue that is concerning members of Islamic faith, he'll be called upon to to represent the community, and then to look down upon, to punch down upon the same community. And this has been designed. And the other thing is that uh, the other political spectrum tries to represent you, in the sense that I really feel for you, but let me help you. Don't help yourself. That would be too radical. Let me help you. Let me click your photo with your dead son, and then I'll shout about it in the parliament and in the streets of Delhi. But you should dare you not come up and do that yourself. Otherwise, it would be radical. And that kind of invisibilization. So any aspect that is of Muslim life that is too visible, no. Like if you see in the most prominent example between how the entire political spectrum, the left and right in India, unites is during the COVID wave. There was this whole campaign of demonetization of members of Tabligh Jamaat in India. They were called Corona bombs. They were called Corona jihadi. And from Madhu Kishwara, Modi supporter and vile Islamophobe, on the extreme right, to somebody like Madhu Trehan, who owns sort of a liberal media called News Laundry. they were on the same page. So they were discussing on Twitter, on publicly, that these Corona jihadis are doing this to get 72 who's, uh, and they'll infect them also with COVID and so on. That kind of disgusting jokes. And then hundreds and hundreds of Muslims were arrested uh, based on that campaign. And 2 years down the line, I met several of them were with me in jail also. Uh, and 2 years down the line, uh, the court comes up and says that the case against them was fabricated, politically motivated, and there was no truth in it. But the damage was done, and that's how they unite, and then they go back to their own dogfight. We become a basketball in this entire game.
I think this begs the question, if you're seeing so much casual anti-Muslim hate from both sides of the political spectrum, for me personally, I think of Nitish Kumar, who is not part of the BJP, but he pulled down the niqab of a Muslim woman at a government event, and you had people, again, like reporters, people on social media, um, just people on all sides of the political spectrum saying it's not a big deal because he meant it in a playful way, or he was just trying to help her out, or he's senile, and seem to use those words to justify a hate crime is unthinkable. And yet it's so normalized when it's against a Muslim or a Muslim woman, a Muslim man, anyone. And so I want to ask you, what is it? Why is it that this anti-Muslim hate is so acceptable among people who claim to stand against Hindutva and Modi and the BJP?
It has been normalized to an extent that it doesn't. I mean, it's not even discussed anymore. This particular case that you're referring to was discussed a bit, or even acknowledged, because the person who did that was a sitting chief minister. But such incidents happen daily. Look at the such holy hashtag holy on any social media. You'll see dozens and dozens of videos where Muslim women, elderly Muslim women, are thrown water, colors, and snatched their burqas, are snatched, and so on and so forth. This has been normalized, and uh, there's no legal uh, real recourse left for Muslims. You can't go to police station and actually do anything about it. If you try to raise your voice, you are jailed, or your house is demolished, or something else happens. And the our allies, a big portion of our allies, of who call themselves our allies, or who are with the so-called the Nehruvian idea of India, they kind of, in the during the movement, during the CA movement, if you remember, the it was fascinating to see a lot of non-Muslims leaders coming up, speaking about how wrong this is, and uh, of the whole question, show of solidarity, that was all there. But once the protest stopped, once it was time to pay, in terms of going to jail, in terms of taking up cases, being tortured by the police, it was only the Muslim bodies. uh, and, and then everybody went about their business. There was no solidarity then when we were in jail, or we were being attacked, and they found some other business to show solidarity to. Then they'll go, some farmers were protesting, so we'll go and give solidarity to farmers, and then somebody else is protesting. So it's more of a performance than a solidarity, actually. And that's how civil society, the Indian society has been by design. It's very exclusionary. uh, Most of the people come from particularly very privileged caste and economic background, and uh, it's sort of a space where you want to do politics, but you don't want to do politics. So you go into the Indian civil society. After CA, we have slowly started to penetrate there. We're trying to grab more space. uh, we aren't allowing them to speak about us without our presence. If you are not hearing from our, there's a panel on uh, the rise of hate in India. There's no Muslim speaker, so we start shouting about that. We start raising voice about that. So now they are being forced to accommodate, but the still, see, we are at the end of the day, we are powerless in the sense that in terms of resources, in terms of access, and in terms of security also. Even today, there are a lot of things that if our allies did or said, uh, they would get away with saying or doing something, then which a Muslim might not be able to do. So they have that privilege. They have never used that privilege for our benefit, in the sense that when Muslims protest, I'm sure you've seen a number of news read about it. The police comes and shoots you directly, and it's something like it was happening in 1960s America, and read Malcolm's biography. Those kind of things were happening there, no? And if these people come in, become a shield, and they were part of those protests, the firing won't happen. And it's true, it won't happen. But they'll always come after the deaths, after the murders, after the killings, and that's something that we have started. Our previous generation was thankful even then that at least somebody is coming. So we are not satisfied with that. This a beautiful expression. This comedian in US he uses when he was talking. In his set he's talking about his Hassan Minhaj. No, he was talking about he's also Indian Muslim, I think. His parents from Aligarh, my city only. Uh, he's talking about his experiences growing up in this Islamophobic era of US, and he said my parents' generation did not speak up, but my generation had the audacity. And this expression of audacity that is there in our generation also. That's why you saw the movement. That's why you think at least people are making noises, and that matters. That's how you build a sustainable movement, and that is happening, alhamdulillah. And I hope it continues.
This is a really good segue to talk a little bit more about your story. You rose to prominence in 2019 after the CAA was introduced by the Modi government, and you mentioned in an interview with Dalit Camera, quote, "When the movement was started in AMU, long before others protested, it was made clear by the students that this was a struggle inspired by Black Lives Matter for the self-respect and dignity of Muslims as a community in India." And I wanted to ask you, can you talk about how you became involved in this movement and what allowed you to, gain such a strong foothold in it?
I was an activist before this movement started. Also, we all of us did try to do our bit in the campus. We were involved in student politics, and I come from Azamgarh. While I was growing up, there was a huge crackdown in my city where thousands of Muslim youths were arrested on fabricated terror charges, including my next door neighbor. So that radicalizes you in a way. So you started. So you replace your comic books with actual news magazines. So I think I was in. I was 9 or 10 years old. Uh, and and you start reading news magazines, and one magazine is saying that your neighbor is a terrorist, the other was saying that he's uh, picked up on a false charge, and you try to find your answers in your own way. You So I had this idea that I'll become a journalist. I'll try to find this. I'll write that actual story. Uh, and that's how, I mean, I knew that there are things that are wrong that are happening, and the people who are doing right thing also, and I should be part of that group. So I was like since childhood I was part of activism, and in in a campus like KMU, which is always under attack. Like the BJP famously calls it nursery of terrorists, and it's mostly majority campus. So the students also know that they have to stick together. So when this and we are frustrated also, no? And the expression that Hassan Minhaj wrote, that we had the audacity, like you stripped our parents of equal opportunities in jobs. You have not given us jobs. You have not given us development. You have not provided us with any state privilege. The only thing that the state has is giving my generation is this passport, our citizenship. Now saying you are not even worthy of that. You are the citizenship. I mean, bro, Act was the last thing. No, everything else you've taken. Now we are going to take away your citizen. That was even what kind of like seed from a question of dignity of a population, that uh, that they are not considering you worthy of even, or that's taking you for granted so much that now they are questioning your citizenship also, that fall in line and prove that you are a citizen to us. We are not going to do that. Uh, and this was about dignity for us. And once you make any question about dignity, uh, it is sort of, it becomes a bigger issue than on the actual problem at hand. You try to solve multiple questions, you connect everything else with the immediate issue, and that's what we did in the CA. We It was the first time when the youths were able to frame the movement. Uh, Otherwise, in the if you see the Waqf issue, our elders, community elders, have been framing the debate, and it is in a certain way the youth did made it a question of dignity, and we said that we are not going to mm, we are not going to show our papers, and we're not are going to be happy that we are not going to show our papers. We want more, and not only we don't want this to happen, we want more. And that resonated with a lot of other youths, and it became a popular movement. We never expected. See, we all of us are activists by accident. Nobody planned to, you know, do that or go to jail, or we aren't this by our profession. None of us. Sharjeel bhai in jail, or Umar Khalid, both are excellent academics, great historians. I mean, one of the finest we have. I wanted to be a journalist. My wife wanted to be an academic. So everybody had dreams. It was purely by accident that this happened, and uh, we had to make ourselves heard, and uh, that's how we came about. And the question of dignity was certainly important to us. And like Malcolm is very popular in this part of world, and through him we knew Black Panthers movement, and then the movement of Black Lives Matter. So we have followed that tradition, and like population wise also it's almost same, almost 14-50% African American population in US, almost 14-50% we have in India. So so we also like try to find which other population in history or the other part of the world has faced similar battle. What methods were they using? Like there was several flash mob protests here during the CA movement. We knew that because the same thing what had happened in Hong Kong last year, a year before CA. So you try to draw inspiration from around the world, and the story of Black Panthers resonates more with us because particularly because they made it a question of dignity, and it was something mm, uh, that strike closest to us, in the sense that uh, see after a point, and if you can skip this, cut this out. After a point, you are fed up of seeing your parents or the elders uh, tired, in the sense, or extra cautious. Once in a while, it's so. I mean, no son, no daughter wants to see their parents, or no younger brother wants to see his elder brother uh, as uh, as somebody who's afraid, as somebody who's weak, and that's what they were doing, to us in our mind. So it became a question for dignity. It became a very natural question of dignity for us, and that's and then we took charge, and Alhamdulillah, CA it has not been implemented yet. The law was passed, but I don't think the government is ready to to implement it anytime soon. They will be on earth again in no time, inshallah.
Inshallah. I think this question of dignity really, really resonated. We saw for us in the United States, suddenly India is exploding all over the headlines, and you look and it's not for once about, something awful happening. It's something very inspiring, and people who look like you are leading that charge, people who are very proud to call themselves Muslim. For me personally, I took so much inspiration from women like Afrin Fatima, and Nabia Khan, these women who were wearing the hijab, who were coming out to these protests, these grandmothers, these children, these students. It was incredibly inspiring as an American Muslim here watching from afar. I had never been so moved, never been so proud to be Indian at that moment, and especially proud to be an Indian Muslim. And of course, you in the course of leading this fight, you've must have interacted with all sorts of Muslims from all sorts of backgrounds because again, this touched so many people from, the mothers who were staying at home to, the brilliant students of AMU and beyond. So I wanted to ask, what are some reflections you've had while organizing within the Muslim community and all its diversity? What brings them together?
See, this is uh, the I don't know if you've visited India any ever, but
Like
if you
3
do,
times in
I
my
mean,
life, last time in 2016.
I've traveled a lot in India. And I'll tell you a couple of stories. You see how the community is. I mean, uh, during the NTCA movement, there was Shaheen Bagh. Once Shaheen Bagh started, the same model was uh, implemented in other cities also. So there was a Shaheen Bagh in a small town in UP, in western UP, called Sambhal, where the police has opened fire, fired at the protesters, and a young boy called Shehroz. His name was Shehroz. He was shot in his chest and he died. He was the only son of his parents and he was 21, 22 years old. We were there. We went to his house. We met his parents, his mother, and then we stayed. We had to address uh, the protest there the next day. The next day, while I was there at the protest site, I saw Shehroz's mother in the crowd. So she had buried her son last day, and she was there, and we told her out of respect that you go home. We are there. We are here. We'll fight. We'll do whatever is needed. And you hear these sort of things in movies, And she puts her hand on my head and she says she's saying that are you also not my son? And she just lost her only son, 20 years old. And recently I met somebody from Hyderabad, somebody who's in middle age man, 45, 50. He has two sons, both 14, 16. And this work issue had just happened, and the the Waqf board had brought out a statement, and it was a very will the statement said that we'll hit the streets, we'll go to jails, we'll fight this. That is what our leaders said in the. It was a very poorly designed text poster in, with written in Urdu that we'll hit the streets, we'll start our protest from here until Bakrid. Will do that. This man has a very comfortable job, very really good job in IT. He's an engineer based in Hyderabad. He sees that news in his office. He comes back. He calls his sons, saying, his 14 and 16-year-old son says that, sir, sons, I have to go somewhere. I might even go to jail. So you take care of your mother and sister. This is a man who's earning like he's in the top 1%. There are very few people who are in the top 1% economically. One of the best jobs he had, and uh, he was willing to let it go. I mean, uh, it, these and there are hundreds of examples like this across in India. Uh, the only struggle is that we have to channelize them, mobilize them in a way that is not risking them further. That is a real challenge, and that's what we are trying to do.
Actually, I think one thing that I do, because most people in the diaspora, they don't really know. I mean, just American Muslims generally, they don't know what Indian Muslims go through. And so to illustrate to them the kind of people we are, and even among, yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, this the kind of sabr they have is so unnatural. I mean, sometimes even like when my wife's house was demolished,
Yeah.
her her father was in jail, her mother and her sister were detained. She did not know where they were, and she wasn't crying, saying she and her mother, nobody. I saw nobody in the family cry that the father's house demolished right in front of them, televised on TV, and saying it went away in the way of Allah, sadaqah in the name of Allah.
SubhanAllah. Wow.
Who does that? This is not
Yeah.
normal. I mean, so, so I
It's
am not
it
as good as them. So
absolutely incredible stories. And I think the one story that I've been bringing forth recently is how many Indian Muslims have taken to the streets for the right to say, "I love Muhammad," willing to risk going to jail, willing to risk their homes demolished, all to say that we are proud to say that we love our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I think that is the most beautiful illustration of the sort of faith and resistance in the hearts of these people. And there's so much to be proud of in that. There's so much to take inspiration from, even for us here in the United States. And so to close us off, I wanted to ask you, do you have a message for the community in the diaspora? Whether that is, feedback for us on how we can better support you, or anything you would like to say to those who are watching from overseas, who are making so much dua and doing what they can to speak out here in this country as well.
one thing that I would like to humbly remind them is that they have some privilege now because of their geography and like in in the past century when the British attack happened started here, advent of colonization here. In that time of crisis, that time of chaos, when the existing way of life was completely demolished, and Muslims of some continent were going through a similar kind of crisis, not very similar, but in certainly a crisis of uh, mm, unlike they had witnessed in the past, in recent past, and at, then several Muslims tried to find solutions and they tried to be creative. Mm, they tried to build movements, and uh, dozens of new institutions were formed. And you see, all the institutions that are serving the community today are found in those times, be it Darul Uloom, Aligarh Muslim University, Nazatul Ulama, uh, Jamiatul Islah, Darul Musannafin, so on. These were the institutions that had uh, proven that have for their worth for 150 years or more. And these institutions were supported by the elites of their time, uh, the ones who were privileged back then, and those were princely states. So they were wealthy. They were not afraid that uh, the British officer would come and take away his resources. Uh, and they were freely like Nawab Hyderabad was uh, he had Allama Shibli Numani, Allama Sulaiman Nadwi, Hamiduddin Farahi on his pension. He helped them form Nadwa. same goes for Aligarh, same goes for the Ulum, and so on and so forth, right? Uh, uh, we don't have those people anymore. The very real replacement of those people actually is our diaspora. Uh, they are the ones who can form resources. So say for some uh, rigor work that requires a lot of thinking, you have to have a calm mind. Invest in documentation of history, resource. Uh, Put aside your resources. At least let your children know that uh, where you come from, what the history is, so that one of them becomes, say, Zohran Mamdani, and he says that there it also a certain currency, no? This has a certain currency, and every community is has a global image. There's an Iranian diaspora, there's a Palestinian diaspora, Lebanese, Kuwaiti, Somalian, and so on and so forth. But Indian Muslims have always clubbed with Indian, the same Taj Mahal, yoga, festivals, and so on and so forth. More than that, land of temples, and we are land of mosques and dargahs also. Uh, so the counterpoint is to has to be given by you, and see the rest of your family back home what kind of resources they need, or what they can't do from India that you can do from there. That's something that, I mean, I don't have answers as in the specifics, but that's something that you should ponder, I think.
I think the inspiration is a great place to begin, and I'm sure that so much of our audience will be inspired from listening to you today. Sharjeel bhai, thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure, and we wish you all the best in your future organizing, and pray for your safety and the safety of all those activists who are carrying on the Indian Muslim voice so strongly. To our listeners, you've been listening to Beyond the Taj, a podcast brought to you by the Indian American Muslim Council. Thank you for tuning in to this month's episode, and we'll see you next time as we continue on our journey to go past the stereotypes and the monuments and explore the heart of who we are.